Well, I'm an owner of storage. I've been an owner for 21 years and run my own stores, much to the disappointment of some really good third-party management companies that I'm friends with. I still like to make the calls at my facilities. I've got 4 now, got a building permit to start construction on another one Monday. I've sold 2, built them, bought them, sold them, added on, watched them flood, watched them get hit with hurricanes, and just about every other scenario. And for 20 years, I stood outside my facilities, and I was the auctioneer because my managers didn't want any part of having to do that themselves. And the auctioneer that came with the first store I had, he had the ability to draw about 6 guys with him and get $20 per unit for every unit every time. And when I ended up firing him the 3rd time every unit got $20, I also caught my manager stealing that same little period of time. And the manager had a free unit, and when we went to move him, he said he needed a week to move out of the apartment that had come with the place and to get out of his unit. And I said, you're going to free that unit up? I'm like, how much stuff can you have in there? You don't make a lot of money. And so when we went and looked in his unit, it was completely full of stuff that maybe I could have gotten more money for had they still been in the units when the auctions happened. So kind of went through a lot of the same pain that maybe you guys have through the years, or maybe you're a way better operator and never made any of those same kind of mistakes. But for me, auction day, I see a lot of people from Illinois. I talked to a lady a few minutes ago from Michigan. She got snowed on yesterday. We don't have snow days. We have hurricane days, Hurricane Katrina days, Hurricane Harvey day last year. Those days are quite disruptive. If it's not a major storm, what I have figured out, though, is with the online auction, all the bidders are trapped in their house, and we truly have some really big runs on weather days when they're trapped in their house, as long as they're not worried about their house getting blown away. So we're going to talk today about how to execute an auction. For me, there was 2 things that got my attention when I started testing with online. I'm a member of the Self-Storage Association in Louisiana. I'm on their board, and I was the guinea pig from the board members to test online auctions. No one on the board had tried, no one that I knew, other store owners had tried it. It was 3 years ago. There were still online auctions being made, but none of us had tried it. I remember distinctly meeting with the Storage Battle guys about 5 years ago in Vegas, and assuring them that no one would ever buy junk or belongings from a storage unit online. I thought it was the dumbest idea I'd ever heard of. I also thought multi-story climate controls would never work because who's going to put their stuff on a cart and ride an elevator? Well, I own multi-storage climate control facilities and do online auctions now, so I'm not a prophet or one of these guys that can see the future clear, but when we tested the stuff for the lien law change, which I think 34 states now have updated their lien law in the last 5 years or so, and that's what we were doing. So when I tested it, we did have a sleet day, and in Louisiana, when they call for sleet, they cancel school. We don't have salt trucks. We have bridges that ice over, and it's not a snow day. Just a threat of that literally cancels everything. Well, I had an auction scheduled. It sleeted, and for the first time in 17 years, I was the only person that showed up. And I was really frustrated because I had left my duck camp, and anybody that watches reality TV, knows all Louisiana guys have big beards down here, and we duck hunt and catch alligators. I had a pretty big beard that week. It was January, and came out to go to my auction, and I was the only one there, and I got really frustrated. Meanwhile, we were having this test, and we had 12 people online bidding that day, and that got my attention, so we started kind of studying the space. Another thing, and I'll get into the scheduling part in a little bit, the idea of controlling my operations was something that we as a company were getting better and better. We had a national player come in. There was a regional guy that had kept out Publix, Extra Space, Cube Smart. U-Haul only had one facility in town. There was a local guy who had 25 giant stores all over Baton Rouge, and he kept the big guys out. Well, then he turned around and let Cube start running his stores for him. If you're a one-off or as they call us, little guys, which represent 80% of all the stores in America, if you're not a national brand, it's really hard for you and I to compete on the internet with these guys, getting pay clicks and all that stuff. But we started looking, at how to make our operations better. And one thing we started doing was having our auctions closer together. When we would do that, we would collect more rent because we're sending these letters out. But then we would have just an auction with one unit. And everybody knows if you advertise an auction with one unit, you're not going to get a lot of bidders showing up. So the control part of how I ran my store became a challenge. And, well, that's a nice slide. Seriously. There we go. Okay. They got it fancy. I hit the button twice. An online auction is going to operate the way you want it to. Most every provider out there is going to let you set your own rules. That's pretty common in the vendor space on that side. The most common rules are 72-hour period after the auction ends. The clock goes to zero for the bidders to come show up and get the unit. Most everyone says no dumpster privileges. If you happen to have a big old dumpster and it's always empty and you let your bidders throw stuff away, a lot of times they'll actually bid more. I don't do that. You bought it, you want it, bring it home with you. And we suggest, and it's most common, that you get a cleaning deposit from these bidders. In your old auctions, when you would have John and Joe and the normal 4 or 5 guys that would come, and you may know that, John always cleans up the unit. I don't have to worry about that. Again, it's your auction. You can waive it for him. But if you're going to get people that you've never seen before come to your facility, it's a way bigger audience online. So you're going to get people you don't know. Take a cleaning deposit. They're accustomed to it. And that way your manager's not cleaning up a unit that was paid for and your rule said they had to clean it out. Big common question is, when do we put the stuff online? Sometimes I hear different vendors kind of give a lot of flexibility on that. I think there's a really good best practice, and I really think it's important it's followed, is when you post your ad in the newspaper, and each state's different. Texas, for instance, you run 2 ads over a 15-day period. You sell it after that 15-day. Usually, day 1, day 7 or 8, you run another ad and sell it on 15. When you put an ad in a newspaper telling bidders, hey, we're having an auction at ABC Storage, they're going to, at www, whatever your storageprovider.com auction site is, when they come to that auction site and they don't see your units, they're going to assume the tenants came and paid the bill. That happens. You send the letter, all of a sudden the guy shows up. You hadn't been able to get him on the phone a long time. He comes pay the bill. If the bidders come after you've paid for an ad, and is anybody from Pittsburgh here? David Decker, any of these guys? Last week I was up there, Alyssa Quill and the Pittsburgh Association. Some of those folks were saying their ad is right at $1,000 when they run their ad. I thought mine was 112 was a lot. Most all the time it's at least 50. When you pay for this ad, you're going to get the traditional auction bidders look at it. Then, okay, you're having an auction again. When they come to the website, you want them to see the unit. You don't want them to think that the tenant is paid. You paid good money for that ad. So post your pictures before then. When we started researching, what do the bidders think about this? I had, for 20 years, called my own auctions. I didn't know it. The bidders in my area had named me the storage Nazi. I had a lot of rules, and you played by my rules, or you got your pickup truck, all your junk, and bring your spit cup with you, and get off my property. I couldn't stand auction day. Storage wars, yeah, the big crowds were fun, but most of them were there just to kick the tires anyway. And my parking lot is is big enough we can park like 17 pieces of U-Haul equipment and still function with moving trucks coming and going all day. We have a big area. On auction day, that just gets jammed up. So you're trying to rent 17 pieces of equipment and you got 25 pickup trucks or 10 pickup trucks and trailers. That was just chaos. So when I talked to the bidders about online, well, the quick story, the first one we did, we truly didn't think was going to work at all. I just convinced that no one would ever buy this stuff this way. So we had an auction scheduled for the next week on Tuesday. It was Thursday. I told my manager, said, look, we're just doing some research, find an online auction provider, do whatever they tell you to do, sign up an account, put the pictures up, and let's just see what happens. Well, it turned out CubeSmart had an auction going off in Baton Rouge with about 50 units 2 days later. So they already had a nice audience on the website. So as soon as we put our pictures up, bids started coming in, and we were sitting there really surprised. That was Thursday afternoon. By Friday afternoon, we had bids at $400 on a unit. Well, I don't get a lot of $400 units. Saturday, they're bidding. Sunday night, they have a few bids come. I'm sitting there watching my units get bid on, thinking, this is kind of cool. Maybe this stuff does work. Monday, the bids happen. Tuesday morning, I go up to the unit. We roll up the door. All my people see it, and it's a nice 10 by 15 climate control. The furniture's wrapped in plastic. That usually costs about $1,200 to get your movers to do that. Way better unit than normal, and all the bidders were looking and oohing and ahhing. And I let that settle down, and I said, okay, I got an $830 bidder now, 40. And they all looked at each other like, who broke the rules? You start out at $10, you know. And they looked to see who bid $830, which is a weird number. I said, I got $830. Anybody going to go $840? And they're all looking at each other like, you know, who did this? Who opens up like that? You're breaking the rule, guys. I said, I'm going to sell it online for $830. And the whole crowd booed and hissed and cussed and said lots of not nice things. And they said, you're going to online? I said, it looks like it. And ain't none of you ever pay that much for a unit. Two of them walked out the door, said, I'll never buy from you online. I said, I don't care. Somebody just did. Then I found out the guy that bought it was from Texas, which is 2.5 hours away. I'm like, oh, God, he thinks we're going to ship this stuff to him. So I called him up. I said, man, do you realize you have to come get it? We don't ship. He said, well, yeah, I know. I said, you got to bring me cash today, because I was the Nazi that only gave him 24 hours to clean it out. He says, I know. I said, you can't use my dumpster. He goes, I'm sorry. He goes, I know. I'm like, have you ever done this before? I'm thinking, who's driving 2.5 hours? He said, I bought 6 units this week already. He says, I'm good. He showed up by 5 o'clock that day with a big box truck, took everything out. I'm baffled. He gives me my $800 in cash, just thrilled to death, and think, well, that's a fluke. Surely that's a fluke. Well, 2 auctions later was the sleet day when no one came but the online audience, and we sold the units to those bidders, and I haven't really looked back. The bidders complain when they first have to do this. They're going to complain about not being able to see it good. They're going to complain about not being able to smell it. I've never noticed all these guys smelling units, but they all complain about not being able to smell it. Tough. Somebody from Texas will not smell it. What the bidders do like after a short cycle of being on the site is they can be at every auction that's going on anywhere around them from their phone or from their house. So if you're having an auction with 20 units and you've got 2 and you're 20 miles apart, you're getting a big crowd and you got a goose egg today. But online, they see it all. So the bidders come around to the point that, wait a minute, I'm a tool guy, or I'm an appliance guy, or I'm a furniture person, and they have time to budget the money if it's a big unit. They got time to, hey, I hate appliances, but I want all this furniture. You know, they can kind of make a plan. Okay, I'm going to need to get a dolly and deal with this stuff, instead of you roll up the door and there's a Model T and you've got Bub and Mark there and they don't have no money. And you want, you know, you've advertised it, you've got your unit tied up. We sold a Model T the other day, that's why I brought that up. And online, we didn't market that in that town. We marketed across the whole eastern seaboard. And we had bidders from 7 states bidding on it. I mean, it's a unique item, and only the internet can let you do something like that. So when we look at measuring online auctions, the view counts that come, if your provider's good at marketing, and there's, just like operators, just like everything in every industry, there's folks that are a little bit better than others. There's some that's a whole lot better than others. Some of them have an idea, you put it on the internet and hope they come. And then there's other folks that just really kind of know how to use social media, that have a bigger audience, that maybe are more proven. Some of them do better in parts of the country or in other countries than they do in different places. So shop around, look at that. But what I do when I measure our company's results or anyone else's is the view count. Most everybody puts that on there. One guy took his view count off because it wasn't real great. If they're not getting 150 views for you, it's probably not doing as good as some other folks can do. And most of it, there's a counter on the details page when you click into a unit. You're not going to always get 380. You know, that's got a big piece of the compressor. Everybody thinks they're worth way more than they are. But it's good when you get one in a unit because you'll get a lot of clicks and you'll get a lot of attention from the tool guys. But it's just really not hard when you have interesting stuff. God knows a neat unit gets so many views because most units, you know, they just throw the junk in there and quit paying their bills, and that's what we end up dealing with. When I see a picture that has racks on it, I know we're fixing to get extremely high view counts. And from a business philosophy for us, we may be willing to market that unit in a way to lose money on it, but we know we're going to gain so much bidder attention when we put it on Facebook, when we put it in different places on social media, and different places. I'll show you in a minute. You could advertise your auctions. Most all our pictures are taken with cell phones from the managers. Some providers is another thing for you guys to research. They'll take a pretty low quality picture is all that they'll take, and they'll limit your pictures. Other providers will take up to 7 megs and as many pictures as you want. There's one guy still doing video. If you're in Atlanta and you got 150 units to look at, and you got to look at 150 videos that last over a minute, who's got that much time when you can glance at photos and go, nope, 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 yes. Nope, 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 yes. So for us, we survey a lot of bidders. We like photos instead. And this is I put this here. This is an example of a small town in Alabama. It's nothing nice about the unit, but we're still able, because of social media, to drive 600 people there. And even the largest operators in this room, I met a lady the other day, has a 17-acre site in Texas. Texas, they always do big stuff. You don't want 614 pickup trucks and trailers on your property, or at least I don't, and my insurance provider surely don't. And my tenants that come and pay their bills, they don't want to dodge these large crowds on auction days. But online, I'll take thousands of views. You know, somebody might recognize something in there that's worth more money to them than it is to other people. How to attract bidders. These are just some. Go-to auctions, global auctions. K-Bid is a Minnesota, Midwest thing. There's a company that chases YouTube, and if they ever get traction there, that may work. I don't agree a lot with that philosophy. There's some local sites, and you can Google auctions in your town and your area, and you can see what comes up. There's one in south. It's not just south. The eastern side of Texas is probably one of the worst looking websites I've ever gone to. I hope they're not in the room. But people like their website, and it's like Craigslist in that part of Texas. So you can spend $10 and put an ad there, and we measure all our marketing through referral codes that when you click the link, you can't see it, but we can see that you came from that ad. We get a lot of hits, and we send them to our site. We market your auctions from places like this. And across the country, there are some unique pockets that have a local place where auction bidders like to hang out. Zip is probably the biggest one in the country. Your timeline of events, again, it's your auction. You have to do this part. There's no auction provider online that's going to send your letter for you. There's late to lien, I think, will do that kind of stuff. Some of the providers that, some of them even integrate with some of the softwares, management softwares like SiteLink has some folks that integrate and will do that. As an auction company, I don't want to be responsible for sending your ad in and it not getting published the right day. So that is still on your side of the table. So you're going to follow your timeline with the letters, the lien demand, all that's going to be the same. But in the letter and in the newspaper ad, you're going to say the auction is going to take place May 10th at www whatever. And you don't always have to put the W's, but sometimes I still say it. I'm old. Searchable tags. I just gave this talk in Orlando, and we had a different slide after this. Several of the sites allow you to, a lot of them allow you to tag or type in a description of what you see. Some of them are searchable tags, and if you guys that are involved in your own website work, just like storage is a keyword in your town, or Highway 20, or whatever, or the things that make people find your storage, there's the way we built our site, and some of the other guys do some of this, is when you put washer and dryer in your unit, and then next month you have another washer and dryer, and the next 2 months later you have another washer and dryer, your website, well, your store through our type of website that's a national website, there's a lot more authority than a local. We're going to have more authority than a local used washer and dryer guy. So all of a sudden, now we're getting people who's typing in looking for a used washer and dryer. If your manager's been putting these tags on the pictures like we suggest, your auctions are going to come up as a place to find used bicycles or whatever you're tagging frequently, and end up beating the appliance guy because his website's going to probably be something that his friend's neighbor's son's roommate from college's cousin did for $1,200. Use the tag features if your provider allows you to do that. It really, it's funny when we get calls, even from some stores, if your site's not maybe the best website yet, you're still using your son's roommates from college, next door neighbor's cousin who built it. They'll call up us and fuss that when they Google their store, their last unit that was sold at auction shows up as the picture on Google. And all we can say is, well, Google crawled your store name, and the only thing they really found was our auction at your store. Update your website, people. Anyways, photos. I was talking last year in Tennessee, and had a young lady sitting about right there, and we were talking about taking pictures for the units, and she goes, "It's just like Match.com." And then she realized she said it loud enough for a lot of people to hear. I helped my friend set up her profile. She turned around and told the audience. I fortunately am old and married and never had to do that thing. It makes sense to me. I just don't think, I'm glad I don't have to do that right now. But so we started kind of playing around and like asking and Googling, how to take pictures for online dating services. And one thing that they had in common with what we do, I'm going to get off this platform, is they require you to put at least 4. Well, you're asking someone to buy something that they can't smell online. Don't give me one picture of 2 garbage bags of dirty clothes and 1 left shoe and think that I'm going to get you $1,000 for that. That's not your test for online auctions. Not sure why the fish lip thing is something that a lot of ladies do. I guess some guys are really into that these days, but you see the lip thing happen a lot. And I think this guy just realized, look, I'm all in. This is who I am. Here's a rose for you. Get me some good units of the stuff in the picture. This photos, back when we had cameras before we had phones, we turned the camera was always sideways. Software, we use Amazon to host our photos. Software was accustomed to getting pictures taken in a horizontal, a landscape format. When you take it this way, because your phone has the button on the bottom, and that's how we all take pictures pretty much these days, this software doesn't like that as much. You're gonna end up with this picture even cropped more sometimes. If you take it horizontal, it just comes out better. We ask people on our site, and I think all the sites, when you go through different photos, you can tell, well, that's a narrow picture. Take it this way. Even on a narrow unit, and that seems unintuitive on a 3-foot door, we still want you to try to get as much of the photos this way as you can. We want 7 pictures. I think all my providers love it that I beat that, all the other guys in this space, because I think a lot of damage was done in the early days of online auctions when people would say, well, when do I have to put my auction up? Well, just give us a couple days. No, the bidders aren't standing in front of our website all day, so they're not waiting for you to put your unit. Give them time to find it, give them your provider time to market it, and give them, we want at least 7 pictures, and some managers will do this because you ask them, and then some of them go like, 2 pictures is all you need, the unit don't have much stuff in it. So they're like, well, how can you possibly take 7 pictures? So for those 2 people in here that might think that, there's 1. We're already up to 5. This is the same unit. You're standing out in the sun taking this picture, and there's a dark unit, so you can't see anything there. You walk up to the shadow where your phone, your smartphone is now inside the shadow of the door. It adjusts the light setting, and wait a minute, there's a compressor or maybe a paint gun thing. Uh-oh. There we go. There's an antique desk that your manager got all excited about, thinking it's going to bring a lot of money. It's probably not. But if it's in Texas, they'll paint it turquoise and pink, bring it to Round Rock, sell it for $150, so you might have done real good there. So take the pictures, just move the camera, get some exercise, bend down and stand back, boy. I should do that more. Don't stand in one spot and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's don't count. You can take pictures of the lock, the seal. I think initially they were trying to make the bidders feel real good about, oh, we put a seal and a tag number on there. 100% welcome to do that. We've gotten a lot of feedback from the bidders. It's like, you know, if the manager stole something, hopefully they had enough sense to steal it before they took the pictures and put it online, not after. The bicycle's gone. You're going to probably hear that I bid on a bicycle and now it's not there. Hope your managers are smart enough. A little bit from the auction philosophy. I actually went to auction school as an owner. You know, one of my stores, we sell about 8 units a year. Another store 20 miles down the road, we probably sell 3 units a month at. The one with 8 a year has got 4 times bigger rent roll, 4 times as many units, but they pay their bills versus the other one. So I'm like, well, why do auctioneers talk fast? You know, there must be something to this. I don't look good in a cowboy hat. I got a really big head. I knew I wasn't going to go that way. So I went on to auction school. I went up to Minnesota and Iowa, to Continental. And they teach you some strategies on how to have auctions. They teach you how to talk fast, which is something a southern boy I didn't think would ever learn how to do. So I went to YouTube before that, and I started looking at videos, and they had all these people doing little rhymes and tongue twisters, and man, she's selling she shells, and before you know what I'm saying words you're not supposed to say. I didn't think I would ever be able to do that, but next thing you know, I woke up one morning and Betty bought a box of butter, but she said the butter bitter. If I put it in my batter, it'll make my batter bitter. Butter bitter, better than the bitter butter will make my batter better. And it goes on and on. So, okay, well, I woke up like the bicycle thing, all of a sudden it makes sense. So I had a couple auctions before I started doing this where I applied some of this stuff. Talking fast, it creates excitement, but usually it's not real exciting when you roll up a storage door. You know, who will give me $1,000 now, $1,500? Or can you give me $20 and haul this junk off my property? That's more like it. One thing I learned before school and one thing they taught was if you got two good units, if you put them as unit number 1 and number 2, and the rest are junk, your bidders, the second and third time you do that, they're going to watch the first 2, 3 units. When they start seeing the junk, they all start leaving. So, and this was before auction school, but they taught you this kind of methodology, if you'll call it that, the science behind it, is spreading out some of the stuff. You want a good unit in the beginning, and I always say one of my best units for last. And my bidders knew they had to stay the whole time, but they also knew if they got there late, they were going to maybe miss a good unit. So you get the money flowing. Well, online's, this is something we just started suggesting in the last few months. You got 10 units. The clock online on almost all sites gives you an interval when you build your account that's the units will go 5 minutes apart, just like a live auction. We're not selling all the units at one time. Not all 10 units. The doors are up, and the bidders can't do that. So as the clocks are going down, you're sitting there, you want the first unit, you want the 7th unit, you got 30 minutes that you got to sit there and wait, and you're seeing a unit that's not as good, not something you want, but it's only at $40, and you're already going because you bought the first one. Well, I'll be at 50. I mean, I'm already going to be there. And so if you keep that audience by spreading out your good units, it really can make a difference. If you got 2 or 3 units, it's not a big deal. If you're selling 10, you're selling 20 units, you buy a new store, and you got a mess you inherited, there are some strategies to this thing. If you've got 10 locations in one town, don't make all 10 stores go off at 10 o'clock on Tuesday morning the 23rd. They're 10, and then 10:05. But if each store starts at 10, you've got 11 stores at exactly the same time. And if the bidders are trying to bid into multiple stores, you've defeated the purpose of being online and letting the bidders be able to bid on everything. So I'll say in a big market like Atlanta, we can do 150 units in a day, and it's not a problem. I can't do them all in an hour. Have some before lunch and after. But if you're in Waco, Texas, and you got 4 locations, I don't think anybody's got 4 in Waco, you don't want to have your quarterly auction all at the same day. Your best bidders are not going to be able to empty 4 10 by 20s at the same time. So, one thing we'll suggest a multi-store operator is don't have more than 20 or 30 units going off in a given day. And so maybe have some Tuesday and some Thursday, or some Thursday and some the next Tuesday. This is something we studied. My store managers, when we started looking at this space, they really got to hate me a lot. We built Excel spreadsheets, and we studied 6,000 online auctions, and we studied them all the way to close, and we wrote down how many views, we wrote down the size of the units, we wrote down the time of day, or we were able to tell through our spreadsheet what time of day they ended. We had a big internal debate when we started this. eBay does really good at night. eBay does really good on the weekends. Storage auctions do really bad at night and really bad on the weekends. My best manager runs a great store, delinquency less than 1.5% at all times, big rent roll, #1 U-Haul dealer in the state, #1 retail seller for boxes in the state for those guys. He was convinced Saturday night at 10 o'clock was going to be the time. It is totally not. The guys who buy a unit full of stuff, if you're buying a watch, you're buying a fishing rod, you'll stay up and click on your phone or your computer. A guy buying a whole unit worth of stuff, he's sleeping because he's been hauling units all day long to the flea market, to his shop to repurpose things. We really feel strong. It's a 9 to 5, Monday through Friday thing. Saturday's a great day to have a live auction and get parents and kids to come out and have a free event at your store. If you hire an auctioneer and he can talk fast, they might like that. It's real popular in Texas to talk fast and wear big hats. But online auctions have them during the business hours. These bidders, it just works best. Schedule your auctions regularly. This is something Ann Ballard. How many people have heard the Hat Lady talk? Okay, Friday she's got a 4-hour session. I think she takes a bathroom break and I do a little mini session inside hers. I saw her in Birmingham a couple years ago, and she was telling me in November she had scheduled her auctions for the whole next year. She knew what day each month the auction was. I'm like, well, how do you know if you're going to need an auction? She said, well, I don't care if I need one. If I do, I know what day it is. So I'm still like trying to follow her logic. So we talked about it more. So I started doing that. I would schedule maybe 6 months out. Okay, and this month on the 23rd, and next month on the 26th, and however we decided to set it up. So then my manager started telling the tenant, you're late, and if you don't pay, we used to say, we're going to have an auction and you're going to end up being in it. Now it's you're late, we have an auction on the 23rd and you're scheduled for it. And he's got this drop dead date, and the tenants, it's not this maybe thing, and we started collecting more. When we moved, we would do them quarterly, or we used to wait till we had 10 units. Well, who wants to carry bad debt for that long? That unit I sold for $830 online, the very first online one, when I called downstairs, I said, how much rent's owed? Because if you get more than a rent, you got to give it to the state and all that mess. He said, well, they owe us like $1,200. Then I got furious, like, why did you let somebody go that long? I said, we're full on that size unit. He said, well, it's the only unit we've had delinquencies on for months. So I'm basing my collection policy and lien policy based on my bidders wanting 4 to 10 units to show up, and then they don't want to pay me nothing anyway. I'm like, wait a minute, this is not right. So we started squeezing our auction schedule. And when you hit, for us, 45 days, we send a letter. We schedule an auction about every 5 weeks, and we run about that schedule. Ann's does hers the same week each month. We do all her auctions for her. And one thing she had learned, and one thing I saw after a year of squeezing my schedule together, we collected more rent. We had more people that paid because we didn't let them get 2 and 3 months. If they can't pay you $100 for $100 twice for 2 months rent and 2 late fees, how are they going to pay you 4 months rent, 4 late fees, and an auction fee? So when we schedule these things closer, we actually saw our occupancy go up because instead of selling your stuff, I taught you got to pay your bill. Now you're still my tenant, you pay your bill on time, you don't like it, but you pay your bill on time. If you don't listen to nothing else, I say do this. Even if you have a live auction, schedule them closer. The problem when we were doing the live, though, is we were having auctions with one, and we were getting extremely poor turnout. So the online tool made this a better tool. And this is a freebie, nothing to do with how to have a good auction. But in talking around the country, one thing, I do a lot of, how many folks have done this before and what do you charge? These are not my numbers, these are just from polling groups. How many charge $25 to cut a lock or $35 or what? Anybody charge more than that? That's kind of the lock cutting fee that most stores charge. It's your store, you do whatever you want. But what I found is a lot of guys like, well, we don't charge anything for that. Well, eventually your manager's going to slip and cut the hasp, the latch on the door, and then you got to replace that. Or maybe you have to send the maintenance guy to cut. There's real costs associated, and the fees for this kind of stuff is something I think anybody could defend to a judge to add this to the bill. The letter fee, some people break that out. A lot of people are just going to one auction fee and it encompasses all of it, but I went on and broke out some of the data we've picked up from talking to other operators. The average across the country, I'd say, is 200 and actually a little over maybe. We see a lot of people up to 250 now, but we see a lot of people that's like, I charge $20 for the newspaper ad. I'm like, what does your ad cost? Well, 50. Well, I hope I have 3 or 4 people. No, you hope you have none, but if you only have one and you said your fee's going to be 20, you lost another $30 for this deadbeat guy that left you 2 bags of dirty clothes and a left shoe. If we ever find that guy looking for just one left shoe, there's a lot of units he can pick up cheap. So just as a FYI thing, if you're not charging fees, I would suggest that as an operator. And also these reoccurring tenants that every auction cycle end up back on the auction block. And I don't know if that's maybe something that just happened at my stores, but you had the same people, and they drive your managers crazy. Your manager wants to sell their junk. They want to kick them off the property. They don't want to ever come back, and they come running in at the last minute and they pay. If you're not charging them fees or you're waiving the fees, it's like letting the kid get away with whatever he's wanting to do. Put their butt in timeout, charge them fees, train them, and they will pay. They all pay their cell phones on time each month. Your building costs a whole lot more than a cell phone. They need to pay you too. That's free. All right. Usually with auctions, we have a lot of fun questions. Scott Zucker, I think Scott's talking later today. He'll teach you a lot of stuff about dead people. Talk to you about auctioning urns and all that good stuff. But any non-dead people questions we can, yes sir. The Model T was up to about 4,000, and the tenant they hadn't heard from in 8 months showed up. They sent an email with a picture of the bids, and he come running in and paid. It wasn't my store. Probably if he paid his bill, they didn't care. Yes, sir. Yes, are we just doing online auctions? No, you either go one way or the other. It is a online auction or a live auction. You can't afford an auctioneer and the other thing. One more question. Yes, sir? No. This has nothing to do with the auction site, the auctioneers or anything. This is what you're charging your tenant because they went into auction. Unfortunately, I didn't see the 15-minute warning, but they're telling me I'm all in and all done, but I don't see anybody with a gun. One more question? Yes, sir.
I thought you said that maybe it was just the first auction. You had online auction. You had online.
Yeah, I tested it that way. That is not the way to do it. I shouldn't have maybe told that story. It's not both ways. It's either online or live. I'm an owner like you guys. Sometimes I do things maverick. That is not the way to do it. If you're going to have an online auction, it needs to be an online auction. That was before I knew better. He asked, what's the farthest you've seen someone travel? I've bought 3 units on my site. 2 of them's been over 7 hours away. And I've seen people at my store drive 14 hours to get units at my stores I own. That's not common. It was a really good unit, and the guy was willing to pay for it. Yeah.
What do you do if someone doesn't show up after they've won the bid?
He asked, what do you do if someone doesn't show up? Obviously, if it happened too much, we wouldn't be in business. We go to bidder number 2. Yeah. And usually the provider does that. When do you start the auction process? My company policy is if you're 35 days late, we're going to send you the lien letter, and we start there. Each state's got a different timeline. Love to answer any questions after